Hello everyone, it is Tuesday today, and today I'm gonna have a very special interview with the lead of Empire Wastes, Portowolf. How are you doing?
Good, good. I'm doing well. I'm glad you're feeling better too. I know the last couple of interviews I saw you were still recovering from COVID.
Yeah, it's been a bit of a misconception. Like the time I recorded I did have COVID, but then I uploaded like 2 weeks later, so by that time I was already feeling better. But
Right,
yeah,
right.
thanks for saying that anyways. So yeah, you're the lead of Empire Waste. What is Empire Waste before we get into all the questions?
Good. The Empire Waste in itself refers to the Empire State, which is New York, and then the mod itself takes place in the greater New York City area.
Right,
Uh,
okay. So that's a brief description. Nice and short. All right, so before we continue about Empire Waste, I just want to, ask some personal questions about what got you into modding and that sort of stuff. So let's just start with that. What is it that got you into the modding scene?
I think it's been the culmination of years worth of storytelling and world building because I've done Dungeons and Dragons and murder mystery dinners and escape the room parties, things like that, since I was a kid. In middle school, I would make games using Game Maker and things, and by the time I started modding was like The Sims 2 and Civilization 3, just starting there. But once I fell in love with Fallout 3 in college and I got my hands on the Gek, I got hooked.
Yeah, you just never let go. So you've been modding for quite a while then, not just Fallout 4 and Fallout 3, but also like Civilization, I heard you say?
Yep, yep.
So
The
how long roughly have you been modding games for?
For quite a while. Probably since like 2005-ish. Just kind of guessing, but around that time, because I was in middle school when I started taking like The Sims 2 and making asset packs and stuff like that.
Right, so a better part of like 15 years then. That's quite a, quite a while already.
Yeah.
So yeah, Empire Waste, it's not your first mod.
Mm.
Is it your first Fallout 4 mod, or have you worked on other mods for Fallout 4 as well in the past?
So, as a personal project, I've done a couple of small ones and a couple of large ones that I scrapped. I started a mod called Onset Travels and Coyote Forest, both of which take place in Massachusetts. Because I was originally from Massachusetts, so those places remind me of things. Coyote Forest was a pun on Foxwoods, which is a big casino in the area, and Onset is a coastal town that I used to go to. So I tried to recreate those, but I've scrapped them to start working on mine. And I also help out with some of the other projects, Miami, London, things like that.
Right. That's quite funny that you mentioned that you made some Boston area located based mods. Quite a while ago, I tried my hand on like level design, also map making. So I
Mhm.
tried to make Long Island, which is just
Ah.
off the coast of Boston, right next to
Mhm.
Spectacle Island. So it's quite funny how that turned out. I also scrapped that. I mean, it was way too much work to get it working. Now, one of the things that I notice from people that make mods, it's that it's quite common that even though that they make mods for Fallout 4, they actually do not play or really play the game anymore. Is that also the case for you, or do you still play Fallout 4 regularly, or is it
I'm,
just pure creation kit right now?
I mean, hell, I still play Fallout 3 in New Vegas.
All right.
I love the games, and like the modding scene keeps even those games fresh. So while most of my time is devoted to modding in itself, I still like to play mods. Like in Fallout 4, I like to play some settlements. I played Forville, and I just played New California and New Vegas. So I still do get to play around, and I like to see it because you don't want to get tunnel vision, and you want to still get that original, what made Fallout great kind of feel.
Right, yeah.
But yeah, I definitely still dive into the game from time to time.
Yeah, because that's something I've noticed as well. Like some of these modders that actually don't play the game anymore. They just like do the creation kit 24/7, and eventually they just become so disconnected from the game itself that the
Hmm.
mod turns into something that really doesn't look or feel like Fallout anymore, just because they don't play the game at all anymore. So
Right.
I'm glad that you say that you still play the Fallout games, because personally I think that's a great thing. You know, it keeps you on track really to the point what you want to achieve. If that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, of course, right now you are working on the Empire Wastes, based in New York.
Yes.
How long have you been working on this mod?
So originally, I started in about 2018, and I worked from the end of 2018 until the very beginning of 2020 on one iteration, and I had to restart. But I've had all my planning planned out, so I took that and started over at the beginning of 2020. So this iteration has been a year and a half.
Right. So you started this, or was it already a thing?
Yeah, so I started this from the beginning. This is actually a follow up to a mod I made for Fallout 3. It was called Into the Ark. And the original storyline was you meet one of the Brotherhood scribes, and he's like, "Oh, hey, there's a train that can bring you to New York. I need you to go there and check out and to see if the Enclave is there." Since in Fallout 3 that was a big conflict. Uh, but what ended up happening was while I made that mod, Fallout 4 got uh, announced. So
Mm-hmm.
I was like, "Oh crap! I have to like finish this mod," because already people had been leaving Fallout 3 for Fallout New Vegas, and I
Right.
figured, well, if Fallout 4 comes out, no one's going to want to play a Fallout 3 mod. So I kind of rushed it, and as part of that was you never actually go back to the scribe to tell him what happens. So
Okay.
I kind of ran with it in this one. So now that guy has kind of gone crazy, and he's just sending people to New York like to their deaths, basically.
Right.
And
Okay.
so now you're his most recent victim.
So, yeah, like you said, it's a continuation of the Fallout 3 mod that you made.
Mhm.
So, continuation wise, the same guy that sent you to New York from Fallout 3 is going to return in the Fallout 4 version, but crazy.
Yes, exactly. He's a an exiled member of the Brotherhood. So if you are or aren't partnered with the Brotherhood, it won't make a difference story wise. Um, but he is there, and there's a few references to the original mod, a few people reoccurring. But if you haven't played the mod, it's not going to be like, oh, I don't know what's going on, because you are as a player the sole survivor, not the lone wanderer. So everything's explained to you anyways. You don't have to have played the original one.
Right, so you actually play as the character from Fallout 4. It's not like gonna be a new person that no one really knows about.
Right. So, well, it's kind of a hybrid because you can, or you will go from Boston to Manhattan. You don't start a new character, but because no one knows about the story of Boston when you're in New York, they're not going to call you, the sole survivor. They actually call you the
Right,
tourist.
okay. The Tourist, oh, I like that. That's a good name. I like that. Often when with big mod project they do like a play on words with the lone wanderer, and then it becomes the lone traveler and all that. The Tourist. It's it's nice how simple it is, really. If it just makes sense. Um, Now it seems that there's already quite a bit of world space done. Can you give us any clues to what the map size is going to be?
Um, com- like compared with actual New York or compared with like Fallout size maps or.
A bit of both. Like, how much of New York is it gonna be? Is it gonna be like the size of Fallout 4 map, or is it gonna be bigger than that?
So in playable space, it will be probably the equivalent of somewhere between 3 and 4. The actual dimensions though will be bigger than 4, but okay, let me reword that. It will be taller than Fallout 4, but a
Right.
lot thinner because Manhattan is a thin, long island, and I've got it running north south, so that it yeah.
Right. Yes, doesn't that pose for like problems? Because it is like quite thin, as you say. Isn't that gonna be like if you have to go from north to south, for example? Isn't it gonna be um, like quite a chore because you can't go left or right?
Well, you can go left and right to an extent. Like there's 11
Right. Yeah.
major what are they called? Avenues. Um, so there is a left and right, and there is the water that you can get in, although I don't suggest going in. um, there is a left and right, and so what I'm focusing on right now is Manhattan. We're focusing on the north-south image of that. There is a tiny bit where you can go into either New Jersey or Queens/Brooklyn, depending on how you go through the story. I don't have this gigantic world space for those two areas yet, or I'm not even really planning it. But as time goes and as the team grows, we might be able to make that a more explorable area and kind of build it up as well.
Yeah, because I was looking at Google Maps at the size of Manhattan, and Manhattan is fucking huge. It's gonna be really tall. If it's gonna, I doubt it's gonna be on a one-on-one scale.
Oh no.
But like still, even if it's only a half scale, it's gonna be gigantic.
Yeah, I had to shrink the way that the map shows up on your Pip-Boy because otherwise you won't see the full thing. But in doing so, it just makes it even skinnier on your Pip-Boy.
Right. So I did see that you had to redo the entire world space. How much
Yeah.
of this world space was already finished before you had to restart it?
So I was about a quarter of the way done. I had like all of Central Park done. I had Times Square done, Empire State Building. I had towards the Grand Central Station, Penn Station, New York, which is coincidentally also Madison Square Garden, things like that. And I had really built up a lot, but part of it was I kind of just dove right into making this world.
Right.
I didn't plan it out very well. I didn't like so for the second part. I'll kind of explain what I ended up doing, but I didn't really block it out correctly. So things were this really weird proportion. It was like kind of squished in one direction and not in the other, which to the normal player would be completely fine. But anyone who knows New York and also myself, since I'm making it, you can tell the difference. And what ended up happening was there's a reference limit that you have, and of course when you start a mod you're like, oh well, I've got all these DLCs, I might as well use them. But all of those DLCs already come with references, and they take away from the number that you have. So by the time I started finishing Central Park, my it started crashing to desktop, and I'm like, what happened? So I started asking different people from different projects. Some of them had no idea what I was talking about, and eventually a couple of them kind of explained the whole reference limit because I didn't know it going in. And it came down to either I can slowly like patch it and try to fix whatever, but it's going to take like a whole lot of work, or I could just start over. And I figured, all right, well, I've already kind of started poorly. Like I have a weak base, so I might as well start over, get the world redone, but better. And I've done a couple of like side-by-side comparisons on Twitter and things, like compared with the first iteration versus the second. And although it sucked at the time, I'm glad that I did it because it looks a lot better. So
Right.
I'm happy for the better quality.
So how many people are currently working on this mod besides yourself?
So it kind of depends on how you want to ask that, because uh, for level design right now, it's just myself. But I do have writers, 2D artists, 3D artists, voice actors, lots of voice actors. So we're a good sized team depending on how you want to look at it. Each department is different sizes. Like I think the majority of the people are voice actors. Um, but we're still relatively small. Like I see Miami and London and other teams like Cascadia and things, and we're definitely a lot smaller than them.
Yeah. Like even with London, they have a lot of level designers, and
Mhm.
one of the funny things that's happening right now is everyone on London that is doing the 3D, like making
Mhm.
custom assets and all that. They're
Mhm.
now doing the level design, and people that are doing the level design are now learning how to do 3D. So it's literally switching the switching them out. So yeah, that's quite funny to see. Um, can you tell us anything about the story of Empire Wastes?
Sure. So it does continue, like I said, with the idea of, hey, I need someone to go to New York to see if the Enclave is there. Um, so obviously, after Fallout 3, you had destroyed the Enclave in Raven Rock, but you do see like some of them escaping in vertibirds. So without telling you exactly what you find, the main plot is find it. Find out, are they in New York? And if they are, kind of what strength are they? But in order to do that, you have to basically pass through Manhattan and kind of follow a trail of breadcrumbs where you're following them as they entered New York. So you go to the different, like you go to military outposts in Manhattan, the regiment, armory office, things like that. Um, but in doing so, you end up meeting all of these little city states. So New York was at one point completely abandoned after the Great Winter, uh, where basically there was no one living there other than like feral ghouls. But people eventually came back and reestablished New York based off of the old world neighborhoods. So you've got like the meatpacking district, which is now called Meatpack. You have like Chelsea, which is still called Chelsea. Or you've got K Town, which is now kind of bastardized as Kato, and other things like that. Also, some smaller areas like The Rock, which is Rockefeller Center, things like that. So all of these towns coexist in a very dynamic way, and the way that you interact with them will highly affect each town. Because just because you help out one doesn't mean that you're only helping that one. Because if you help out one guy that doesn't like another place, then you've given them a benefit, so you've kind of screwed over another thing. So it's definitely a lot of playing politics, and oftentimes the result is not exactly what you might expect. So
Right,
there's a
so it's a
lot.
bit like Nuka World on steroids then.
Yes, exactly.
Right, okay. Now, when I think of a dystopian New York, I think of the first Division game, which level design wise looked absolutely amazing. Story wise, not so much. At least that's my opinion on it. Does
Sure.
Empire Wastes take any inspirations from that game?
So yes, a lot of the visuals, not so much gameplay, of course, but the visuals of the city, I like the way it was depicted. Um, the way that I've got the city is parts of it have been completely destroyed, and obviously there's no one there. But some of it, like very small parts, people survived the blast. So what would happen after this Armageddon style event? How would people go? So you're gonna find certain churches that'll have like those huge like piles of candles and picture flowers for everybody who died.
Oh,
Uh,
right, yeah.
you'll see like how not the responders, because that as a group isn't there, but similar groups would have reacted to the survivors. How did the hospitals affect get affected by all these radiation sickness people coming in all at once, etc. So I do take some inspiration, especially from the Division, but also other games as well that take place in New York. But because it is a alternate New York, I take a lot of liberty.
Right, yeah. Now I remember, because you mentioned responders just then, I remember that you commented on one of my videos, because in my mod there was a character, NPC called Shelly, who is
Yes.
from New York.
Yes.
The voice actor is also from New York, funny enough.
Yes.
And you commented that you would put in a reference to this character. Is that still gonna happen?
Yeah, since because I do like to kind of have connections with established mods, because of course none of this is technically canon, but I still like to have little bits of head nodding.
Yeah.
But specifically for that, since it was New York, I was like, oh, this is a good one, and it's lore friendly and things. So it's like, okay, let me add that. So since she takes place in New York, you'll kind of see where she used to live.
Right. Okay. So I was thinking, I don't know if you're gonna have it, but like, there's tons of tiny parks, and maybe like you can have those big military tents there, and like a camp that's been overrun and all broken down, and you see a sign, something like that. That was what I was thinking. But if you want to build an entire house for this character, be my guest.
Well, I actually have started working on it already, and basically, yes, there is an outdoor tent area. It's kind of makeshift. It's less military style, but it's still a tent where there's obviously something underneath, but it's been ransacked. And close by is also going to be, where she would have slept. And she'll have records where you can kind of just small things, nothing huge, but just at
No,
least.
I was just saying, like, don't put anything huge there. It's not that big of a deal.
Exactly. But like, because I liked the concept of how people move in and out of things, and I'm going to continue that with like I mentioned, the whole Manhattan had left at one point because of the
Yeah.
Great Winter. So the reestablishment of Manhattan is going to be not told to you per se, but there will be a lot of world design to show that.
So faction-wise, because you just said like there's gonna be tons of like tiny factions, you have to play politics quite a bit. What different kind of factions are we talking about here? Is it like Enclave and some other major faction, or is it more like I don't know, just survivors, different groups of survivors that don't get along? Like, what are these factions about?
So the majority of this is actually not going to be with the Enclave. The Enclave is actually kind of towards the end of the mod. And that's kind of its own thing. But during the actual game itself, as you go, it's going to be mostly the city states, the neighborhoods, things like that, as they interact. But there's also a bit of a non non-physical location groups that will be spread out amongst the entire thing, and a lot of them are completely new. They're not, oh, it's the I don't even know, but like one of them actually is the Church of Saint Monica, which is the church from Rivet City in Fallout 3.
All right.
So that religion, because that religion is based off of the East Coast, is actually based off of New Jersey, which is where I live, in Atlantic City. That's where it comes from. If you listen to the priest, so because the location is very close, that religion is going to be pretty big. It's going to be bigger than like the Children of Adam for that area at least. So you'll have that. There's a couple of mafia type groups. There's something very similar to the Responders, but kind of a multi-religion group that kind of gives aid. There's also the Rad Pack, which is a pun off of the Rat Pack. So there'll be different groups that you'll see, but the majority of it is the cities themselves, like the towns.
Right. So raiders, are they going to be a thing?
So the thing with this is that the raiders are not going to be generic raiders. There will be specific towns that are raider towns. They're a little bit more organized, so certain ones will be more like I don't even know an example, but like they would rather have you come in and then get all of your maps from you by cheating you or whatever, as opposed to just murdering you. Because if you murder people, then people stop coming. So
Right.
uh, they're a little bit smarter. So they're kind of Raider-esque, and then there are also small groups that are more like I'm gonna just go out into the world and kill people. But even they are uh, specific to an area. Like there's the Ammo Gang, which is in the northwest. So like they're specific. But yeah, I'm trying to avoid just generic Raider as far as I can go. But yeah.
Right. Let's see. I saw that you're also introducing some new weapons to the mod, such as the Fire Department Hook and the Liberty Torch, which I think would be a really awesome weapon to see, like with a behemoth. Instead of like the anchor he has the Liberty Torch. That would be really sweet, I think. But are there gonna be any other custom weapons that are going to be added?
Yeah, we've got plans for weapons, armors, chem, other consumables. For the weapon part, we've a lot of it is melee weapons since it's a lot of makeshift stuff. They don't need bullets, but that doesn't mean there won't be unique firearms either. We'll have some of those as well.
Right, and like from mods or like still have to be made?
Yeah, so a lot of the melee weapons we've already made them. For the guns, because I'm not as used to the gun style, because the animations and things, they're
Right.
still being worked on. But yep, a lot in the works.
All right. Of course, in Fallout 4, you have Fenway Park, home of the Boston Red Sox. But I think there is one other baseball team that's even more famous than the Boston Red Sox, which are, of course, the New York Yankees. Are they going to be a part of the mod?
The Yankees will only be referenced in the mod because their stadium is just outside of the map area. However, the Madison Square Garden, which is a big basketball stadium, will be in there, and you'll also have references to the Knicks, or as they were originally referred to as the Knickerboxers. So they will be referenced. The team itself obviously isn't going to be there, just like the Red Sox around either.
No. All right, no, that's. I was just thinking like outfits from the Yankees, like stuff like that. But yeah, if it's going to be outside of the area, I doubt there is going to be anything like that.
So there are going to be a lot of what are they called? The tourist shops. What are those called? Gift
shops.
There's souvenir shops. So you'll
Right.
get like the Yankees shirts and the Yankees hats and things like that, as well as the Knicks for New York. And you'll also get the base like I love New York, but that's evidently copyrighted. I have to take a little bit of liberty on that, but yeah.
Well, I think the same goes for like the Yankee logo and all that sort of stuff. That probably is copyrighted too. So I don't know if you'll get in trouble for putting it on a T-shirt that you're gonna use in a Fallout 4 mod. But I can imagine that that's something you might want to be careful for.
Yeah, like anything that I put is not going to be a straight rip from what they have. So it'll be because, of course, we've got 200 years of Divergent, or 100 years or whatever. So the font will be the same, but maybe instead of like the New York Yankees, it might be like something different, just so that it's a new logo but recognizable.
Right. So is there gonna be like a Diamond City 2.0 inside Madison Square Garden, or is there gonna be another major city that you can visit, like with a lot of settlers and all that?
So one of the things about Diamond City was I was kind of disappointed by the Diamond City. Like I loved it, but it was also like they built it up to be like this huge thing, and you get there and there's like, oh, there's 30 people here.
Right. Yeah. It's not that populated for the size it is.
So I have several areas like that where it's like it's definitely more populated than the wastes, but not any giant metropolis thing. One of them being the Rock, which is pretty well populated, and one of which being Bellevue, which is based off of the Bellevue Hospital on the Lower East Side. Um, those two are pretty well populated because they have a lot of people there, and I also try to keep it so that they're not just like generic person living here. They have a name and they have lines and things like that. But
Yeah,
we got a couple of towns like that, but nothing gigantic, no metropolis, because it is of course still post-apocalyptic. But
yeah. In quite a while ago already, you mentioned that you had Empire State Building, you had Central Park, all done and finished before you had to redo them. Are there going to be any other like major landmarks besides those two?
Yes, I've already gotten the Flatiron Building in the second iteration. We will have the Statue of Liberty. We will have a few other smaller ones that are less commonly known, but they are definite. Things like the New York Library, things like that. But one of the things that we definitely won't have, for various reasons, is the World Trade Centers.
Right.
They
Yeah.
are not going to be depicted in any way because I don't want to have either the original or the new version destroyed and visible. So that's not going to be a part of the mod.
It seems a bit, yeah, like, what's the word for it? It it's a bit iffy, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah. I totally understand that. Now we've been doing this almost for 31 minutes, so let's go through the rest of the questions rather quick. How long do you think it will take until it's like at a releasable state?
I'm pretty optimistic that by the end of about 2024, I can at least get out of alpha. It won't be done, but I can at least give out to the people a full map with the quest. But I'm gonna continue to work on it to add things, like I mentioned before, like adding Jersey, adding Queens. So I will be working on this for a long time, but at least a playable rate around then, because I've been keeping track of how much is left, and I'm on track for that. Especially as the team grows, that'll help too.
Yeah, like one thing because I've seen how big you want to make it, and now you're also saying that you want to include Queens and New Jersey for like a bit. Aren't you worried it's gonna become too big?
So I do like, that's why I'm right now focusing on Manhattan. Those things are kind of just dreams of mine. And even for the Queens and Brooklyn and New Jersey, it's not going to be like you have all of Queens. It's just going to be like a small sliver that's close to Manhattan. Because like for Brooklyn, I specifically want the Brooklyn Navy Yards because that's plot specific. But you're not going to go like all the way east of Brooklyn, you know?
Right. You're still looking for new people to join the project, I assume?
Yes.
Right, so what is the way that someone can join and work on Empire Waste?
You can always reach out to me directly, or the easiest way is on the Twitter page for Empire Waste. There's a pinned message of how to apply. There's a thing. But even if you do that, just message me anyways, because I don't check that daily.
Right, okay, clear. Do you want to say anything else before we wrap it up?
I mean, not really. I think we covered most of it. I think the mod scene is really growing, and I'm excited for a lot of the other mods as well, not just my own. So I'm looking forward to what comes out.
Right, awesome. Well, thank you for enduring this with me. I hope you had a good time with this during this interview. I sure did.
Yeah.
All right, well, it's good to hear. For the people watching, thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed already, make sure you do. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, hit that like button, and I'll see you all next time.